advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. We are in the thick of it in the college football playoff, a couple days away from quarterfinal games, bowl games. This is the round I have been very, very excited for. As soon as we saw that bracket, some really interesting matchups. We've got some news. We've got some notes. Everybody's got a football coach as of right now. I'm knocking on wood. It's December 29th. There could be more surprises, but Michigan was the last one, and Ohio promoted from within, and we have some stability a couple days out from the transfer portal opening. So I'm sure we don't actually have any stability in this.
There's none. Stability is gone in this sport. Hopefully everybody can hold on to who they need to at least get through this portion of it, and we'll deal with whatever happens later on.
Are you so like are the donors, like the phones are ringing, right? They're like, well, we got to get an extra $250,000 for this guy and for this guy, all of that.
I know a few people who have been known to cut some of those checks, and they are being prospected hard, intensely right now. So yeah, I mean, everybody's doing the same thing, and I think it's an interesting spot where we're at too. Not to get into a whole diatribe about it, but I feel like people are starting to be like, okay, like what is the actual payoff for me now? Because we talked about this when it first started.
We wondered if this was ever going to happen, right?
Yeah, because the old way it was like, oh, you could get your name on a building, or they put it up in the facility or in the stadium or whatever the case was. Like you had that, and now if you're not bringing back wins, people are starting to get a little bit like, okay, when am I gonna see what I need to see? So I know some donors are probably a lot happier right now than others. There's some people that feel like they're just lighting money on fire right now. So curious to see if that starts to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, there's a billionaire in Lubbock, Texas, who is very happy with how his money was spent. But I think I'm with you with that, right? Like, it was also different when, like, okay, let's go full stereotypes, like under the table handshakes, local businessmen, whatever. That's not the same dollar figures that we're talking about now, that people are being asked to spend every year.
I think the fact that it was a little bit nefarious, and like you could help your team kind of in the shadows and then go to the country club and be like, oh yeah, the reason we got that 5-star was because of me. I think a lot of people really enjoyed that aspect of it. And now that everybody's doing it, you're just another guy. Like, you're not that special anymore because you're not the one who is getting it done. Yeah.
But without the new world, we would also not have all these jokes about crumble cookies. So you win some, you lose some.
It's the I'm going to go on Twitter and announce to the world that I'm using my crumble money to get the coach to stay. That is what I love about it.
That part is funny. We do know all of these mega donors' names that in ways that we never did for all of these other programs. So speaking of the transfer portal, keeping guys out, Texas has really struggled to do that for their running backs. So what we've had for the last couple of weeks is a number of players like announce their intentions to enter the portal, because portal opens January 2nd, but obviously coaches are tampering and working through their rosters and figuring out what they're going to look like. I was talking to Brett Bielema the other day, and he was just like, he thought by pushing it back, it would kind of clear up December, but like it's giving me people more time to tamper than ever before. Yeah. So that part is worse than ever. So anyway, to the Texas point, per our pal Max Olson at ESPN, running back Quintravion Wisner plans to enter the transfer portal, leading rusher in back-to-back seasons, 1 more year of eligibility. What's interesting, the reason I put him in our news and notes segment, is he is the 4th Texas running back to declare plans to enter the portal. So CJ Baxter, Jarek Gibson, and Ricky Stewart Jr. all going into the portal. Young reserves, Christian Clark and James Simon, are the top returning scholarship players at the position. We have kind of seen this happen before, where like an entire position group kind of gets wiped out. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like that's usually an indictment on like the position coach or like some of the staff there. But it's really surprising to see it happen at a place like Texas. Obviously, they didn't have the season that they thought they were going to have. They're still really close to making the playoff, 3 top 15 wins, and now the running back room is gone.
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily what's going on down there, so like I don't want to put it on one person, but the thing that you and I could see on Saturdays is we're like, man, they just can't run the football that well,
Yep.
right? And so I think if you're a player and you're like, don't know how much better that offensive line is going to get, and Sark is hell bent on still calling plays, and it hasn't really gone our way, then maybe they're like, I should go look elsewhere for opportunities. So that to me is something to look at. And after their bowl game, if you start to hear more players specifically on the offense that feel like they want to get out of there, I think it's something to look at. The flip side of this is it's Texas, and they're going to be able to go get a running back if they want to. So I'm curious the flip side now that you've opened up some spots in that room, who are their top targets, who can they get, and does it actually improve this offense that really did struggle when it came to the rushing game this year?
No, and I think that's a great point because, usually like from a headline standpoint, everyone is focused on the quarterbacks that are available,
Right.
the quarterbacks that move. But when you have the kind of money that Texas has and this opportunity, you're going to be able to get whatever running back you want as well, or a couple, as we've seen. But again, people are kind of hyper focused on the quarterbacks, and there are some other positions and some other transfers that might end up being more impact guys. So Texas is one to watch just because of that amount of turnover, in addition to all of the quarterbacks that are going to be moving around and some of the other big names. I think that we're interested to see where they go.
Before we move on to different topics, you mentioned tampering, and I don't want to get too far away from it. It's an issue, and it bothers me because people complain about it, but they also all participate in it. And Kirby Smart made a comment, I think it might have been during the offseason or whatever it was, where he was basically like, yeah, I've got these meetings with agents set up. And there's a way to read that as like the guys who are on his roster, he's got to meet with their agents to figure out the NIL portion. There's the other side of that where you're talking to these agents and you're like, well, what other guys do you represent? And have they thought about entering the portal? Like you're basically like, we'll take some of your guys too. Like we want to take care of your guy that's here, but like, who else do you have? And it's not the tampering in the sense of like the coach literally calling a player that he recruited from high school and was like, hey, you should come here. But they're basically everybody's like, hey, we need a running back. We need 2 offensive linemen. We need a rotational defensive end. We need a starting linebacker. Who you got? And that's how the tampering's going down right now. And I don't know how you can get control of that.
Yeah. You really can't. And when the coaches complain, unless you're going to like turn someone in and you've got some sort of like evidence, it's hard to try to like litigate it. I mean, it's just not going to be a thing. And every time we talk about ways that like coaches could have a better calendar or schedule or rein in something, you'd have to have them all choose to do that. And like, they're not going to if they think that they can get an advantage somewhere. So that is something that's happening there. So yeah, we'll cover the portal, we'll cover the big names in the movement, but wanted to make the Texas point. A couple other just thoughts before we head into our quarterfinal previews. We're going to have in-depth previews for all 4 games. We're a couple weeks now into bowl season. A couple things I just wanted to highlight from there. One, I love the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I don't know if I love it the most though. Kalani Sitake might love that Pop-Tarts Bowl more than I do. Eating the little mini Pop-Tarts that he was in the Gatorade bath, eating one before his interview, all the stuff throughout the week. He had so much fun, like toasting the Pop-Tarts in the actual trophy, just all in. It was great. Both coaches, Brent Key did a great job with it too. Everyone really like had a great time at a bowl that is supposed to be that. And like, we talk about this of like, what do you need to be as a bowl now to get people not to opt out and to play? You need to be fun. Like you need to be something that like guys want to be part of. And it was great. So I wanted to give BYU a ton of credit. That was also a great game.
It was
one of the best of the non-CFP games we're going to get all year. And then like, there's just been a couple cool moments like Houston, everyone was like crazy emotional after that win, got him to 10 wins, which I wanted to get this stat, courtesy of our pal Chris Vanini. Willie Fritz has 10 win seasons at 5 different schools now, which is wild. Belen Junior College, Central Missouri, Sam Houston, Tulane, and now Houston. The only head coaching job where he didn't get to 10 games in one season was Georgia Southern when he won 9 games and 8 games over 2 seasons. Unbelievable. We talk about these coaches that like win everywhere. The Signettis, the Kalen DeBoers, like, my goodness, like, he's absolutely on that list. So I wanted to mention that because I think that's awesome. Virginia, it was a really great post game as well with, where that program has everything they've been through off the field in recent years. And then for them to get to, the double-digit win totals to end with a bowl game was just really cool. So, like, again, people are like, oh, are there too many bowl games? Do people care about bowl games? We've seen some, like, real emotion and these really incredible moments this season that I think are worth highlighting. Like, we should absolutely be celebrating the way that these teams are celebrating the 2025 seasons they've had.
Yeah, I mean, I am a very traditional guy in the sense of loving the college football postseason. So I'm there for all of the emotion that we see from these coaches and these players. And you mentioned a couple of really good ones, like Kalani Sitake having a ton of fun with that. Like, that's awesome, and it's what it should be. You can't begrudgingly show up at a bowl game and like minimize the opportunity your team has. If you're going to participate, you have to be fully in. So I love seeing that. Virginia, awesome, right? Houston, awesome. We saw Penn State, which, by the way, Penn State Clemson, we would have thought that was going to be a college football playoff game. They end up playing in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. You saw the grass clippings that got tossed on Terry after the game.
I enjoyed that.
I did too, and he was emotional, and the players were emotional for him because they have that connection there. And PJ Fleck, right? Like, big deal for the 7 consecutive bowl wins or whatever the number is, and people can say whatever they want about it. Like, it matters for a lot of players and coaches and programs to be able to cap their season off with the win, even if the bowl doesn't mean as much as what people try to say. So I love seeing it. It makes me feel good about this sport in the sense that there's still guys who want to line it up and go play when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously there's been a lot of said about opt-outs, right? And team opt-outs, because there were a few of those this year. And like, I loved like Sitake in the post game, I guess, kept getting asked about that, right? Because like Notre Dame would have been in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So like, it was just such an obvious storyline for that game in particular. But a lot of coaches were asked about it. And you obviously had a lot of star players in a lot of these different games opt out, and still to come. More will be doing that. And I just love when the coach, like, it was like for Kalani, he was just saying like, you just don't get that many of these games with this particular team. And that the only guys that didn't play in their game were injured, and like they had to tell them they're not allowed to play. Because like they did want to just kind of finish it out. They did want to, they were disappointed about not making the CFP, but like there was still an opportunity to play a football game, and you just don't get a lot. You practice all year, you put in all this time, and there's only 12 guaranteed games. Right. So if you get an opportunity to play in a conference championship game or a bowl game or something like that afterwards, there were a lot of players and coaches that were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's finish out the season. You have a bunch of the teams that have the young guys that like want to prove something.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of different reasons. And so I'm with you, because we're also entering the point where like we'll have more of those like 2 p.m. afternoon bowl games where it's great. It just like, it helps when you don't know what day of the week it is.
I know. And you don't have that much going on in the first place. Like, throw on the freaking bowl game.
Yes, the Birmingham Bowl. Give it to us, please.
Yes. And to the point about guys playing, like, I'm watching Cade Klubnik go out there after the season that they had and the ups and downs for him, and like draft stock plummeted this year, but he's like, one more with the guys, let's just go out and finish it the way we started. Denai Dennis Sutton's another one who like probably didn't have the year that he wanted and played very well for like one more time this year. It's like, I can appreciate that. And I totally get the other side of it where, there are different factors at play, but I will always respect the player that goes out there. But the opt-outs have kind of sullied, you could say, bowl season, but there are still people who like to participate in narratives. And one of them is this comparison of the conferences based off of the bowl records. And we lament this all the time. Just not enough crossover during the regular season to really say, right? Like, we say the Big Ten is top heavy and then the depth kind of falls off. And we know the SEC is deeper, but do we know what we know, or are we just really making an educated guess? And so Tom Fornelli did this on Twitter. He had all the bowl records in CFP games and bowls through the 27th. Big Ten's 5-0. Big 12 was 2-0. Americans 4-3. The ACC 4-4. CUSA 3-3. MAC 2-3. Sun Belt 2-4. Mountain West is 2-5, and then the SEC 1-3. And this does not include conference on conference matchups like we saw in some of the early games there in the CFP. How much stock do you, as somebody who consumes this sport more than probably anybody else out there, put into the postseason bowl records on a conference-to-conference basis?
I think a lot of people used to put a lot of it into it, right? Like it said a lot of the narratives about the Pac-12 being down when you remember there was like one year they were like 1-8 in the bowl season or something. So I do think that is a thing. I think with the opt-outs, it makes it very, very difficult. It's got us to, there's a couple different things that now some of the team accounts have adopted. So for the SEC, it was always, well, they weren't motivated to play in this game, right? So if the SEC lost a game, they weren't motivated. And then now you even saw Houston have a tweet that was like, oh, like an SEC undefeated in hypothetical games, right? Like there's just a couple things that people poke at when an SEC team loses. I did see a lot of narratives being said when LSU and Missouri lost like the same night. Because I do think it's kind of the middle of the pack teams that do set or change narratives.
Yes.
And that's where you're like, okay, but they were supposed to be deep, right? So the depth should show up against a Virginia or Minnesota or whoever, right? Like the middle of the other leagues. I guess Virginia is near the top of the ACC, but you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what that.
So that stuff I think is interesting. But again, motivation and opt-outs make these things very genuinely difficult to do. I think even if there becomes like a stat or a narrative that is like fairly obvious, I don't think it carries over into next season anyway, because everyone's rosters change so much.
Yeah.
So like that used to be a thing, like coming out of bowl season into the next year. I don't think that exists. So I guess I'm saying I don't know that it holds a ton of weight. But I will say, like, I think the CFP performances do, right? Like that has been a huge thing that the SEC wasn't in the championship game last year or the year before, right? Like that's a thing that definitely matters.
Yes.
But yeah, what about you? Do you take away thoughts on like entire conferences coming out of bowl season?
Not generally. I'm kind of with you where like I'll look at the CFP games and 100% that matters to me because you got everybody bought in. And then the games that are brand on brand in the postseason, like Michigan, Texas, for example, is one that intrigues me because I do think there's still a lot of pride, even if guys are opting out. And like those are deeper teams to begin with. And the thing that folks are going to do.
So for example, last year, Michigan, Alabama.
Yes.
With a lot of opt-outs. Like like definitely contributed to narratives for sure.
Right. And the reality of the situation is, I think if a team from the SEC, for example, has a bunch of the top guys opt out and they still beat a team from the Big 10 or the ACC or the Big 12, the SEC people will be like, well, see, this is what we're talking about. We're so deep. We're so talented. We had guys opt out and we still won. But if they lose that game, it's, oh, well, our guys opted out. So I guess my thing is for people doing the narratives, let's be consistent with it. Right? Like you declare before the game if it counts. That's what I would like for people to do is look at the matchup and say before foot meets leather, does this one count for the narratives? And then I'm ready to rock.
I love how because you love like coming up with hot takes, formulating them. Like you have all these rules around like how to make a take, how to like set the narrative.
If we're gonna do narratives and we're gonna do takes, and you know this about me, I appreciate a great bad faith argument. Sometimes I participate in bad faith arguments.
Sometimes.
But if you're going to do it, you still have to have parameters around how the bad faith argument is being made. And this is one of my parameters. Make the declaration before the game, and then we can argue after that.
Okay. I look forward to you forcing the declarations before these games. I'm sure that the 4 quarterfinal games will set and change narratives. So let's dive into them. We're going to, yes, like absolutely. But also like, these are going to be awesome games. So I am super, super excited to dive a little bit deeper. We did preview them a little bit coming out of the first round. But I want to make sure that we have time for each one. We'll go in order of the games being played, and we will make predictions for all 4 at the end of today's pod. So let's start with our New Year's Eve game, Miami, Ohio State. Great helmet matchup here at the Cotton Bowl, 7:30 Eastern on December 31st. I've covered these games, the ones that are on New Year's Eve, a little bit of an interesting vibe. Hopefully everyone who is listening to this and is a college football fan making sure you're at a New Year's party that is relatively calm, so you have access to a television and maybe some sound for the game. That is the thing that I hope for all of you. This is a super interesting game. Obviously, Miami beat A&M to get to the quarters. Ohio State hasn't played since the Big Ten championship game. Which side do you want it? Which team you want to start with for this one?
Let's start with the Miami side of things.
Okay, go ahead. What intrigued you? I mean, we saw a game where, you know, I think coming out of that game, we were saying like, hey, I don't know if they trusted Carson Beck to go out and win this game for them. Called the game a little weird. Missed a bunch of kicks. Mark Fletcher Jr. was the MVP, and he's the reason they won that game.
Yes.
So what do we take away from Miami and this matchup that they're facing with Ohio State?
So we'll start with the Carson Beck aspect of it. And it's interesting because people were like, oh, you know, it was a windy game and you know, they didn't want to. Well, Marcel Reed was throwing the ball. So there's wind on both sides. But it certainly felt like this was a let's protect Carson Beck in the game plan. And wind could have been a factor there. Like, I'm not going to try to say that it wasn't, because some guys are better at cutting through the wind than others, just with their throwing motion, their arm strength, etc. But it certainly was like, okay, how can we find creative ways to get the ball to Malachi Toney, which I thought took them out of an offensive rhythm at times, because so 100%. Much of it was misdirection and trickery. And go ahead.
Did you feel like they were just like, we want to get Malachi Toney like 2 touches?
Yes.
In these 3 plays. Like it felt like they were trying to hit a number and not play what was actually open to them. Like what the best case scenarios and what the defense was willing to give them. Like the defense was obviously keyed in on Malachi Toney. He's very good. Yes. It's not like that was a surprise, but it felt like they were forcing that and had to go to trickery instead of just doing what was coming to them.
And by the way, when you watch the game tape of that back, Texas A&M could not fit the run to save their life. I mean, there were multiple plays where I would pause the tape and there would be 2 linebackers in one gap and a gap that was completely vacated. And when they started handing the ball to Mark Fletcher Jr., that's when they really had the success. So to me, I think it's twofold. It's like, who is Carson Beck going to be and will they actually trust him? And the way that their offense is on a normal day is they like to get the run game started, and they run counters and they do a great job of that. And they try to mix in different personnel. And then they will create designed throws down the field to try to take advantage of coverage. And Carson Beck can hit those when they're generally open. Will they trust him to do that is the first thing. But the most important thing to me is I think Fletcher needs direct runs. I think they need to have balance in their offense. I think they need to make Ohio State defend both the run and the pass. That is going to be the biggest key. Carson Beck has to protect the football, and they have to get the runs going. And then when they throw it, to me, Ohio State, their one weakness on defense has been in the slot, right? So can you hit some of those passes in the slot, in the seams, to try to take advantage of them? But it really has felt more and more that we've gone on that they're in this on a 1 to 10 going into this game. How much are we trusting our quarterback? And then they devise the rest of the game plan based off of that.
You think it'll be a lot more?
I think they have to. Like,
I agree. You're also indoors. Yes, you're going to be facing, you know, this defense.
By the way, if you think you're going to trick your way down the field on Ohio State, like I'm not sure we've seen that, right? Like this is the stingiest defense they will have seen. Like they're at some point they're going to have to say, screw it. Our quarterback is going to have to make plays.
Also, if you're going to win games in the postseason, your quarterback's going to have
what it has to be.
Go out and earn them. I agree. I also think this is an Ohio State team that last year, after they lost very late in the year, it lit something under them. A lot of the same players. You know, you have to think that they've just kind of been stewing in this since the Big Ten championship game. I
talked to Ryan Day about it. And I asked him, this is probably a week after the conference championship game. I'm like, how are you guys doing? And he's like, well, what do you think? Like, how do you think they're doing? I'm like, they lost. He said, I think this is something that they needed to feel. And that was an interesting statement, because the last time he really got to get that feeling was when they lost to Michigan in the 24 season before they went on the run. And then they just won a whole bunch of games after that. And so I think sometimes it's really difficult to coach when your guys are just winning like that, because what am I supposed to believe as a player? Like, you're yelling at me, but we're doing things the right way. And so I do think this can be a positive. Let me say this is there's been a lot of this conversation about the trenches, and this will be the good transition over to the other side of the ball. But people are like, oh, Miami's offensive line really good, which I don't disagree with at all. I think the tackles are better than the interior. Has Miami played a defensive line 1 through 4 as good as what they're going to see against
Well,
Ohio State?
no, but who's been the best? Was it A&M?
I think it might have been A&M. Right?
Probably, I think.
Yeah. And so I think
Well, certainly
maybe
in
Notre
terms of
Dame
like
early in the
athlete, right?
year, but Notre
Yeah.
Dame's defensive line didn't play well
No.
early on.
No.
Right. So I think that is one of the interesting things in a game like this, where Miami, they're feeling good about their offensive line. And we talked about them all year. We both agree that they're a really good group. But this whole idea of like their edge is in the trenches 100%, like maybe on the other side, I think their defensive line has an advantage over Ohio State's offensive line. When Miami has the ball, I think at best it's a wash. I like those are two units I'm excited to watch go against each other.
Completely agree. So a couple of just notes for this game that could end up being very important. Ryan Day said he's going to call plays for this game. There was a lot of consternation leading into that Big Ten championship game because Brian Hartline has taken the USF job. It was a crazy week. You remember it was early signing period. There was a lot going on and people were very frustrated with like the offensive game plan and the preparation, the play calling. That's not going to be an issue. Overall, way more time here to manage doing both jobs. So way less concerns about that for Hartline. But also Ryan Day going to be calling the plays. So you don't even, that takes away that issue there. From an injury standpoint, Ohio State is going to be making a change at right guard because of an injury. It's also not been a strength for this offensive line for Ohio State all season. So that will be interesting and maybe potentially help them by changing there. And then the thing that I'm most interested in general with Ohio State, it's something we've talked about all season long because we've watched a lot of drives stall out, and it's the red zone, the play calling, the successful nature or unsuccessful nature of a lot of the way that they've had those trips against Michigan and Indiana. So the last 2 times we've seen Ohio State, they scored touchdowns on just 2 of 7 red zone trips. They score touchdowns in the red zone 66.7%, which is 35th in the country, but among the playoff teams that are left, and there's 8 of them, it's 6th. So this has absolutely been a question and been a topic all season long. Some of that has to go with like 3rd and 4th and short play calling and what are they doing. But that's going to be big. Again, I think especially when you have the athletes on the other side and a quarterback in Carson Beck, who again, if they let him open it up, he's got a ton of experience in big games, and he's got weapons to get the ball to. So I think that's going to be a huge part of this. They need touchdowns, not field goals in this game.
I tend to agree with that. And it's interesting because Ohio State's had this issue in the past. And I was I
know. I feel like we've talked about this for like 3 years.
We have. And one of the things that the conclusion I came to, and people looked at me like I was stupid, but it makes sense in my head, is don't get into the red zone. Right? Like there's an opportunity when you get to about the 35, 40 yard line where you take shots that get you into the end zone. You have more space. It's easier to call an offensive play from that part of the field and have success trying to get into the end zone than it is from the 15-yard line. So that's the one thing that I think Ryan Day really does help with. And we've watched it for years where he'll just dial one up. He'll have one where he knows what's coming and he knows exactly what he wants to get open. And that's how they can have some success there. To touch on the offensive line real quick for Ohio State, Tegris Ebola has been a weak spot all year. And people have been dying to see Gabe Van Sickle or Josh Padilla in the game. And Van Sickle is actually one of the highest graded pass protectors in college football. So that feels like it's an upgrade. Where it may be an issue, and it's been an issue all year anyway, when you try to run behind the right side of the offensive line, can they get that done? Because he's not as good of a run blocker as he is as a pass protector. So that'll be something to watch there. Everybody's been talking about it. Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, they'll ruin your day if you let them. And people have this notion off of watching what Indiana did to Ohio State, where they're like, those guys are going to eat. And I think their defenses are different in the sense that Indiana up front, it's chaos, it's movement, it's twists, it's stunts. They create movement to get guys unblocked. And Miami is more of a traditional front where they're like, we've got dudes who can just win. So that's one thing. Indiana's secondary is as good as any in the country at confusing the hell out of quarterbacks. They confuse the shit out of people. And I don't think Miami's secondary does as much of that. They like to play some man-to-man. They like to play some 3 deep. They'll switch it up into quarter, half. So if Julian Sayin can see what he needs to see and they can protect for long enough for him to get the ball out, he's got to get it out on time. There's a way to neutralize it. The other thing that intrigues me is Ryan Day calling plays, because that will break tendencies from what they've had all year long. He's going to call it differently than Brian Hartline did. And I think that can be an edge in the game too. He's going to have to break tendencies because Miami's very good at rundowns. They have good run fronts. They can stop the run, pass downs. They can get after the quarterback. If you can make them off kilter in the way that they process on defense, that's where you start to hit plays on them.
Yeah, we'll make our picks in just a second. I wanted to underscore, even if Julian Sayin feels pressure, he's still really good. Like his completion percentages, even when it's 2.5 seconds or less, are still high. Like he is still very unbothered. And I think about other coaches who've played Ohio State this year, and those were the compliments, right? That he never seems ruffled, never seems rushed. And still at the very end of the day, we'll see if this holds in this game, a very clean jersey. He's been upright a lot. He's not been taken to the ground. So we'll see with that Cotton Bowl. We'll make our picks at the end of the pod. Let's get over to, I always forget, Orange Bowl. Oregon, Texas Tech. This is the noon Eastern game on New Year's Day. Of course, Oregon crushed JMU to get here, and Texas Tech had the first round bye as Big 12 champions for the first time. This is the game or the individual matchup that I've been most excited about as soon as we saw the bracket and assumed that Oregon would be able to beat JMU, which they were. It is this Oregon offense, especially its offensive line, against Texas Tech's defensive front. That's where the money went. That's where the consensus All-Americans, the David Baileys, Jacob Rodriguez, is the pressure that they get, their success against the run. All of that for Texas Tech has been such a huge part of how they got here. The defense. Oregon's offense, they've been banged up, but it's super creative. It's super explosive. But they run it. They can do all the things because they have had an offensive line that for the last couple of years has been finalists for the Joe Moore Award.
Yes.
And they've got Dante Moore playing his best football now. So you've got strength on strength, which I love. I love it. I want to be between that rock and a hard place here. And I know, probably talk about the off matchups as the ones that'll probably decide the game, et cetera, but I'm just so excited to see strength on strength from both of these teams, the powerhouses that powered them to get to this point against the best of the other team as well.
It's a single most intriguing matchup to me out of any of these games, like the game within the game between the Oregon offensive line, Texas Tech defensive line. I said this, I started to formulate this, and the closer I've gotten, and it's the thing that we're lamenting about, the lack of crossover. The more I watch Texas Tech and their defensive line, and I watch the guys that they're going against in the Big 12, I don't look at a bunch of offensive linemen that they're beating, they're rushing against, that they're stopping, holding up in the run game, and say, oh, that guy's going to play on Sundays and be an impact player, right? Utah had a couple of them. And that was a game for Tech where they weren't able to really pressure the quarterback. I think they got home one time and it was more of a cleanup sack type of situation. And when you're going up against Oregon, who, as you mentioned, Joe Moore Award finalists the last couple years, their offensive line has played really well. I'm curious if there is some sort of adjustment period that they have to go through to be like, okay, like these are the guys, right? Like we have to get comfortable with the resistance we're going to feel from that.
It's funny that you bring this up for matchups between Big Ten teams and the ACC and the Big 12, because we talked about this in Miami and Ohio State too. It's like you can physically dominate a lot of teams in those conferences. Like this was Texas Tech's strategy, was to beef up the defensive front and think that against most teams, you'll just be able to beat them, right? Line them up and you'll be able to beat them. You're more talented, more athletic, faster, stronger. And now we see if that works, right? Against the best of the best. And this is where like scheme and all of the other stuff come into play, which I think is going to be really, really interesting in this game. So I can't wait for that particular matchup. A couple of notes on injuries. We haven't gotten the full injury reports yet because we're not close enough to the actual game time, but DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant Jr. were both back against JMU. They didn't do much. Gary Bryant Jr. didn't have any catches. DeCorian Moore had one. But again, like you're starting to get your weapons back and a little healthier. Evan Stewart has been close to returning, which would also be huge for them. He was the top returning pass catcher from last year, but got injured in the summer. That would be huge as well, because he had a great first year after transferring from A&M. Couple other just notes that are worth pointing out. Both of Oregon's coordinators got head coaching jobs at Cal and Kentucky. So they've been pulling double duty. Again, this is the time of year where you can do that a little bit easier. You got a lot of time. You can make your phone calls. You can hire your staff and still prepare for the game. But that's something to keep in mind. Whereas the other side for Texas Tech, you have coordinators that signed extensions, celebrated. The GM did too. Everybody did through the length of Joey McGuire's contract. Like they're all in to try to do this year in and year out together. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the stat that I love the most about this defense for Texas Tech, they're the only team in the country to allow less than 1,000 rushing yards on the season, but they're also the only team to allow under 900 rushing yards. Like they have been so good against the run. They lead the nation in takeaways with 31, 39 sacks on the year, tied for 6th in the country. Like it's going to be so much fun because again, they have been so good at it. They're so confident in doing what they do. And what they do with the pressure sets up, again, a lot of those takeaways, forcing them, forcing passes, but also just punching the ball out. They're able to do a lot of different things. So that's what I want to see, if they're able to actually dictate the game in some capacity, or if Oregon is able to just kind of neutralize it with that offensive line. If they are healthier in the receiving core, are they able to get those big explosive plays and pull away? Like, do we think Baron Morton can come back in a game? Like if they're down big, like there's just a lot of twists and turns and matchup things that are super interesting about this game.
No, I'm totally there with you. Like I think that, again, their defense has been phenomenal all year long, and the turnovers becomes a bit of a thing because, you know, Dante Moore, for as good as he is, like he'll throw it to you every once in a while. So if that becomes a factor in this game, you certainly start to like the edge for Texas Tech. But it feels like Oregon has seen a defense this year, or maybe two, that can really give you trouble. And this Oregon offense is, I'm not going to say it's one of a kind, but they're operating on a different level. I wanted to ask you this question. I went back and I watched the first round game, and we know JMU put up a ton of yards. We know that they started to score some points late in that game. And the common refrain on social media was, oh, Oregon had all their backups in by that time. And I'm watching some of these explosives, and I'm like, oh, man, that's Bear Alexander on the field. I'm like, oh, there's Mateo Uyunglele. I'm like, there's Tuioti. I'm like, Dylan Thieneman, the All-Americans back there missing tackles. Is there a concern about Oregon's defense, or was this just one of those games where, like, it's easy to not be locked in when you have such a big lead coming out of the half?
I think it's a mix of both, but there's definitely like a little bit of a red flag there, right? Like there's something that you're flagging going, that didn't look right. That didn't feel right. So that's absolutely a concern. And I think Oregon fans were split on whether or not they were worried about it, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, because again, and then, you know, you had all the backdoor covered. So there was just like a whole lot happening there at the end of the game. And just some big plays. I mean, even early in the game, like when JMU was doing, like
they drove down twice.
A great
early.
Game. Yeah. They just marched down the field. So yeah, I think like there's a healthy level of like, maybe not a red flag, but like a yellow flag waving there about the defense and the way that game ended. Yeah. All right, let's move over to the Rose Bowl. I love the Rose Bowl. It's the absolute best. It's always like a picture perfect day in Southern California. The Indiana Rose Bowl gear is incredible. It's perfect.
It is. It really is.
Every Rose Bowl, like all the logos, everything is perfect. But I don't know. It's just something with like Indiana and the fact that they haven't been here.
I will say, a couple years ago, those Michigan throwback jerseys with the rose on them.
Those were good.
I mean, like the Rose Bowl gives you a great opportunity to have elite gear, and Indiana has not missed any opportunity to have some of the best merch that you could see.
100%. And our friends at Home Field have absolutely crushed it. Like I was like, should I get this? And I was like, why would I wear an Indiana Rose Bowl jacket ever? I don't know, but it was very enticing. This game is going to be great. I mean, there's so many narratives around Alabama playing Indiana. The game is at 4:00 Eastern on January 1st. As always, we will get the sun setting over the San Gabriel Mountains. This is like this held up playoff expansion, so to make sure that they get this time slot year in and year out. It's going to be picturesque. It's going to be great. It's a game that features Alabama's football team and Indiana's football team, and Indiana's football team is favored.
Amazing.
I just want to make sure that we underscore that. That's the craziest part about all of this. Then you have all the familiarity with the staff, right? Curt Cignetti spent 5 years under Nick Saban when he first got to Alabama and started to build this thing up. On the other side, Kalen DeBoer, his defensive coordinator, Kane Womack, Nick Sheridan, all of these guys were together at Indiana in 2019, which was a recent high point.
Yes.
Until now.
That was like the first renaissance of Indiana football.
It was. Michael Penix Jr. and the
That's right.
it was like that's when 9-win Indiana began. This idea that like maybe someday they can win 9 games.
Yeah.
Now they're undefeated, the number 1 seed in the college football playoff, played at the Rose Bowl. So awesome from a narrative standpoint, and just like what it would mean for Indiana as they're trying to really change their history in college football.
Yes.
To go through Alabama to do that, right? What are the actual keys to the game, though? Like, what does Indiana need to do to play their game? Like, because we always talk about how prepared they are, how solid they are. They don't beat themselves. So what do they need to do to kind of control this one against Alabama?
So I'll say this is I feel like they're in, it was a lot of it was Nick Saban, and it still holds to this day. There is this feeling that college football in a lot of ways has to run through Alabama to a certain extent. When we won in 2014, we played them in the semifinal, and that was a big deal for us, was beating the king of the SEC. And we just talked about Michigan in their Rose Bowl, and like that was a big deal, was beating Alabama en route to a title. And now you have Indiana, which I love the way you said, trying to change their football history and doing it against Alabama, Nick Saban or not, regardless of what that is, like that feels big, especially to guys in the locker room as they're gearing up for it. So very excited for this opportunity. For Indiana to be successful, I think they've just got to be what they've been all year long. And to me, it starts a lot on defense. And I mentioned the structure of that defense, and they're going to be without Daly, who got hurt in the Big Ten championship game kind of celebration there, which was tough to see.
The game. It was
the celebration.
Yeah, like walking around, like
trying to high five the
high five fans.
Being a good dude. Like no deed goes unpunished. Like
didn't even know you could get injured doing that. Who knew?
No. But led Division I with 19 TFLs, right? Like lived in the backfield. This is an Indiana defense that lives in the backfield. I think that their defensive structure is actually well suited to have injuries on the defensive line because they do so much through scheme to get guys unblocked. So it's not to discredit him. I think it's more of a credit to how their defense functions. I think that they can certainly overcome that. Their secondary, to me, is what is going to stir the drink. We've watched Ty Simpson, and we've watched him have these high points. We've also watched Ty Simpson go out there and play hero ball. And this is 100% the type of game where he might hold the football and get hit, or he might hold the football and try to force it downfield, which he hasn't been super accurate, and throw it to the wrong football team. So I think it starts on defense. And then when they have the ball, I keep mentioning balance. I think it's such a big deal. They like to run it. They will run it if the run's available. They have to start with the run game. And then Fernando Mendoza has to just settle in, right? We watch sometimes his footwork gets a little bit funky. He'll take some hits early on the game, throw a couple errant passes. He just has to settle in and play his game. He won the Heisman for a reason. But to me, it feels like all of the pressure in this one, even the biggest game in Indiana history, all the pressure is on Alabama because Indiana is the top dog right now.
I would agree with that too, which is strange. And maybe that will flip a little bit as we get closer to game time. One of these teams has been so consistent this year. One of them hasn't. And, it's like, I was talking about this recently about like, hey, why are we getting such, lopsided first round games, or like the games aren't that great? And it's like, well, those games involve teams that are on the bubble, and the bubble teams are not consistent. Like that, you don't know what's going to show up. So you could have a really good showing from them, or you could have a really bad one. And then like the variance is what you're getting. And I think that that's been a huge part of the first round, not just the group of 5 participants. I think that's just like the teams that are playing in those games could be really good or could be really bad. And so for Alabama, like we've seen both of those things. We've seen them when they really, really struggle to move the ball. And we've seen them when they can't run it. We've seen different issues. But then we've seen like what they did after they were down 17-0 against
Yep,
Oklahoma, against a
we
very
saw
good
both of the
defense.
things in the first
Both
round.
in
We
that
saw both
game,
of the
right?
things.
Yes, you saw both sides of Alabama. So I think obviously you're Kurt Signetti, you're prepared for the best. He talked about how he's studied Kalen DeBoer offenses dating back to his time at Washington. So he's
He
just been
studied
impressed with
everybody's
them.
offense, by the way.
Well, yeah,
Kurt
he
Signetti
did say that
studies.
too. He's a film junkie, so he's watching everyone. But I mean, again, like this is part of the reason they're always so prepared. Why the defense is always in the backfield. They don't miss assignments. They don't do things like that. So it's very hard to beat those types of teams. The teams that have come close. Yes, a Fernando Mendoza interception, mistakes that you don't normally see from them, pressure, right, hitting him. Those are the things you have to do to have a chance. So that will be an interesting test. And then, I'm very interested to see what Indiana does defensively. Bryant Haynes was my pick for the Broyles Award. I don't know if they've announced the winner yet, but he was my number one in the ballot. I think it's been incredible what he has done with this defense. You talk about some of the linebackers and some of the other levels of the defense. You are talking about guys that started their careers at James Madison. That is a school that very recently was in the FCS, right? Like they were not getting the best of the best athletes. Like they have built up this defense and they deserve a ton of credit for that. So I'm really excited for this game because I'm with you. I do think you kind of have to, when you go through Alabama trying to win a title, it just means something more. It feels right. Like there's a level of respect, I think, through the sport that you had to go through one of the gold standard. Again, it's not Nick Saban, it's a little bit different, but you still have to go through Alabama to get there.
That's right.
Which I think matters. Right. And especially for Indiana, where like these are programs on the opposite ends of the history of the sport. Of course you have to go through Alabama to do it.
Yeah. It's no disrespect to any of the other teams that I'm getting ready to mention. But it would feel weird if they avoided Alabama in the playoffs and their path included, Texas Tech and Ole Miss and Oregon who hasn't won a title, right? Like it feels like in this story that we're writing about this phenomenal season, it only makes sense that they would get one of the preeminent brands of the sports have to go through.
Disney, as they're crafting the Disney movie.
That's right.
Picked Alabama, right? Like it had to be, you had to go through Goliath.
I mean, Disney kind of did put the bracket together, by the way.
That's a good point. Fair point. Fair point. I actually thought about that as I said it. I was like, that was probably a bad example.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, though.
Let's talk about the last one. Sugar Bowl, 8 p.m. Eastern, January 1st. Ole Miss versus Georgia. We have seen this movie before.
My eyes are going to be so bloodshot, by the way. Like, I'm going to have bags under my eyes. They're going to be bloodshot. Just a whole day of marathoning college football.
Cannot wait. It's going to be great. These are like the classic bowls. I love the day that ends at the Sugar Bowl. It's a great nightcap for the first. It also allows everyone in New Orleans some time to recover before they have to settle in and get over to the Sugar Dome, the Superdome, and get there for the Sugar Bowl. So this one, it's going to be interesting to see because we have seen it before. Georgia was able to win. It was 43-35, 17 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. This was back when Georgia was still like first half Georgia, second half Georgia, especially fourth quarter Georgia was really good. And it was a game that was very offense heavy for better lack of a better term. 34 first downs for Georgia in the game. Had the ball for nearly 38 minutes. 510 total yards of offense, 221 on the ground. Now, kind of feels like they might be able to do that again, does it not?
Yes. After watching what the Ole Miss defense looked like against Tulane, and again, no shade to Tulane, they were moving the ball. Whether they were finishing drives is a different story. There were yards out there to be gotten, and they were getting them. That's it. That's the comment.
Oh, that's all you had? Okay. Yeah, no, that was true. Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I thought you had more. I mean, it's very factual.
I mean, that's it. Like, if you want more, I'm going to give you the more. I don't think Ole Miss is going to win this football game. Like, I think Georgia is Death Star Georgia right now, and Ole Miss to me has been a team all year where I'm like, fraud alert.
Yes. Ole Miss fans were very mad at me early in the year because I didn't rank them as early as other people did because I was like, well, they're nearly losing to some of these teams that are not very good in the SEC. Great offense, They can move the ball. It can be explosive. Trinidad Chambliss has been awesome. All of that is super fun. The defense has been a problem all season.
Yes.
They are going to give up a lot of yardage. They are going to give up a lot of points, and they're going to make their offense have to go out there and win it. And again, a lot of situations they've been able to do that. But I'm with you with like the way that Georgia is playing. It's championship season, championship level football. They've got a quarterback in Gunnar Stockton who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's not super, super flashy, but he gets the job done and he does it very, very well. And then again, you have a team that got way more consistent over the last like 6 weeks. Like the defense, everything has been just so much better and more consistent from 1 to quarter 4. That has made such a big difference, I think, for this team. So it's hard to imagine any slip-ups enough that are going to allow Ole Miss to stay in this game. I wanted to ask you, though, Joshua, like, is this where the impact of no Lane Kiffin comes in? Because we didn't really see it, right? I think you or I could have been the head coach against Tulane and won the game.
Like
but are we going to see it here?
Yes. And I'll tell you the 2 ways that it'll pop up. And we saw both of them a little bit against Tulane. So the first one to me is Pete Golding having to be the game manager, head coach, while also being in charge of the defense. To me, that it puts more on your plate and it's an adjustment, right? And so I think that was where you saw this yardage differential between the first time and the second time that they played. I don't know if he's been able to spend the time that he would want to just with his defense in preparation for the games. Right. So I think that's number one.
You mean the yardage differential, like against Tulane? They gave up 421 yards of offense after 282 the first time. Like
that's what I'm referring to. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they moved. So they really moved the ball.
They were moving it. And again, finishing drives is a different thing, but they were moving it. And to me, that is 100% like your head coach now used to be the guy who was in charge of the defense, and his time is just more spread out among other things. And when he's in game, he has to be tuned into other things, right? So I would start there. The other one to me, Charlie Wise Jr., there was a conversation. Everybody's like, oh, he's the play caller. Lane is the head coach and he's the play caller. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm not fully buying that. Like Lane is definitely the guy who is in charge of the offense. And I thought that their script to open the game, the first 10, 15, whatever you want to say is their script. They went down 3 plays, score a touchdown. They go down, 4 plays. They had 14 points in 7 plays, right?
Yeah.
And that to me is indicative of a guy who is really good at Monday through Friday, figuring out what a defense is doing and implementing the plays that he wants and then calling them early in the game to get the look. Then you get to the part that you have to do on Saturdays, which is I've got to make adjustments and I've got to see what this defense is doing. And I've got to be in tune to the way that the game is going. And I have to have that feel, that thing that you can't teach of when to dial it up and when to take that shot. And I felt like that wasn't there in the latter part of the game. And you could say maybe they were shutting it down, so they weren't showing a bunch of stuff.
They were dealing with a couple injuries in the game. So maybe that's part of it.
But it certainly didn't feel like that Lane Kiffin. And I mention the whistle all the time, but when he whistles and he knows he's got it and he's signaling a touchdown before they even snap the ball, that's not there anymore. That's not there anymore, and that's going to be a question.
That's the image. It's when he was at Alabama and like the ball is being snapped and he knows it's a touchdown. He's walking down with like the arms up.
He threw the play sheet in the air.
Yep. And you're right. There's a couple play callers that can do that. And they know it's going to work. And they're going to need that. I think they're going to need big plays to play in this game against Georgia because of how well Georgia's defense has been playing lately. So I'm interested in this. Although I, again, still wish it was not a rematch. Like I really wish they had adjusted the bracket a little bit to avoid, because we had 2 rematches in the first round and 1 here in the quarters. Joshua, it's time to make picks. Give me your 4 winners of these quarterfinal games.
All right, I'm gonna run it down. I'm picking Ohio State, and I think that they end up covering. And I know it might have opened up at 11 and a half or whatever, and it got down to 9.5 or 9 or whatever it's at right now.
Opened at 11.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. 10 and a half, something like that. But to me, this Ohio State team, I think they can score enough. Like, and when I say enough, I think the number is 24. That secures a victory for them. If they can get higher than that, it is what it is. I don't know if Miami's scoring more than 10 points in this ball game. And so I feel like it's going to be a decently comfortable win. I'm giving the edge to Oregon over Texas Tech. I think this is going to be the most tightly contested, best game. That Oregon offensive line and what they can do if they can scheme up, have some time to hold the ball and throw it downfield, to me, is what becomes the difference in that ball game. Indiana, I'm never picking against ever again. Never picking against Indiana again. And the consistency, as you mentioned, is their superpower. It's their strength, and Alabama's just not that. I think they're going to be able to be who they've been all year long. And then give me Georgia. And this one, if it's not Ohio State, I think it's this one that doesn't have to be close. I think Georgia's a better football team. I haven't really trusted Ole Miss all year. And I don't know what that number is right now. It's 6.5, something like that. I think they're covering it.
Okay, well, I don't want to make all of the exact same picks, but
you have the same picks.
Well, so I started on Selection Sunday going very chalk in this round.
Mhm.
Like and listen, I think if it's 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the semis, those are incredible semifinal games.
No doubt.
Because you got the new money in the Indiana Texas Tech matchup, and then you'd have old money in Georgia Ohio State
Right.
as the other semifinal. So let's stick with that. So, but I was going to say, over the last week and a half, I've come on Oregon, I think, because of what we were talking about earlier, where I don't think Texas Tech has been challenged by a team that has been this good. And then I don't trust their offense as much as I trust Oregon's defense, like the off-ball picks. But I'm going to stick with Texas Tech here just to be a little bit different because they are built to be able to win this game.
Yes.
It's going to come down to the margins. They have not been tested in the margins very often this year, but absolutely, they should be there. I'm with you. I think that will be the closest game. I think Georgia Ole Miss will be the most lopsided game of the 4 games. And then I stick with you on the rest. I think Ohio State and Indiana have been 2 of the best teams in the country all year. And I also think that it would kind of be reflective of the season and the way that we think. If out of the Final 4, there's 2 Big Ten teams, because again, that league didn't have a ton of depth, but it had great teams at the top, that it's Georgia out of the SEC.
Yep.
After all the conversation about Texas, all the conversation about Ole Miss, that it's Georgia that's back there. And then, of course, Texas Tech and what they did to build this roster and figure out what they needed to look like to be able to win college football games in 2025. So anyway, that's what I'll go with for my picks. But I think regardless of what we get this weekend, the semis are going to be awesome. And this is one of the points that I just want to underscore. When you have bad first round games or not exciting or not close first round games, the hope is, and I know you want a smaller field and more people are they're coming up with your talking point this year, that there's too many teams, that we don't need to expand. But either way, if you're stuck at 12 and this is what the first round is going to look like, the hope is that you get better games as you go. This year, because you fix the seeding, these quarterfinal games all look really enticing. So here's hoping we get good ones, but they should be a lot better than last year.
The seeding fix needed to happen. I'm glad it did, because to your point, last year we were coming into this weekend, we were looking at some of the matchups oh my God, it's not
I went to the game that I thought was going to be a good one, the Rose Bowl, Ohio State, Oregon, because they had played so close in the regular season.
Yeah,
it was
not your fault though. That wasn't anybody's fault. Even if the seeding was right, Ohio State just hit a different level. So that's the outlier.
But that wouldn't have been the matchup either.
No, I mean you had Penn State and Boise, and no disrespect, but what? Why was that a second round matchup? Right. So now we've eliminated the idea of a team being overseeded compared to their ranking, and now we can get some more balanced matchups.
Yes, we can. I love how you had to say multiple times the other shit. No offense.
Yeah, because these people have been very sensitive. Group of 5 is a protected class now, and you have to be very careful.
Not everyone is teeing off on them.
Yeah, but you have
defender.
If you don't want to be an a-hole, which I aspire not to be when I talk about this, because I do respect them, but I just disagree with some things. I have to make sure people know that I'm coming from a place where I'm not trying to be offensive.
Okay, well, it's tough because you're a hater. You love bad faith arguments, so it's but
this is not bad faith. This is me not hating, and it's not being bad faith. This is actually who I am in this moment.
Well, we love that. We love that for you. That's a good spot to end the pod on. So we are going to have a quarterfinal recap pod. It will be out on January 2nd. So we'll record in the morning, be on your feeds midday or in the afternoon. So, subscribe, rate, review, follow the pod so you'll get that as soon as it comes out. We will, of course, have semifinal previews. We'll cover the portal. We'll do all of that. And then we will both be in Miami for the national championship game and have pods and coverage from there as well. So we are we're wrapping up 2025. This is our last pod of the year. The games will be awesome. I can't wait. I hope they're all good. I hope they're all close. And mostly I hope that everyone is not dragged to a New Year's Eve party where there's no television. That is the worst.
I'm hosting.
You need to be able to watch this game.
On purpose. I'm hosting.
Oh, I'm hosting too on purpose for the same reason.
Yeah.
Because
I'm in control.
It's going to be on. B, you can put the sound on.
Yes.
And C, everyone also knows what they're walking into.
Yes. There's no question. We're not doing any of that other stuff. New Year's Rockin' Eve, love you, not watching you. Can't do it. All you
have to do, you just turn it on for like the 2 minutes right before midnight. That's all you need to do.
No, that was when Ohio State missed that field goal against Georgia. You can't leave the games.
We quad boxed that one, so it was happening at the same time, which was crazy. You're watching the ball
down
drop
there. I was on the field. Broke my heart.
That was wild. That was really crazy. I don't think it'll be as late. I think they moved these kick times up so that it's like not going to be at midnight, but we will see. Everyone, Happy New Year. Thanks for hanging with us. It's been a very fun season. Still so much more to come with postseason coverage. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. This is Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity, and we will see you in the new year.